Well, hello there, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much indeed for joining us on our sixth webinar, which is the WiggyWam Get Your Property Questions Answered webinar. We do this every week. For those of you who have never tuned in before, we take the time to answer some questions that our WiggyWam community has sent in to us, either via email or through a Twitter feed, Twitter handle, should I say, or through the WiggyWam website. And I'm pretty excited to be with you this week because we've got some amazing announcements to be making. And I'm really pleased that you guys are tuning in and joining us, and you're submitting your questions to us. And we're getting the opportunity to give you the benefit of our knowledge and experience and all the rest of it. So if you like good news, if you're excited as I am, then please stay tuned during the course of today's webinar, because I'm going to do another giveaway. So you don't want to miss that. And also, as I say, we've got some exciting news to announce, which I'm sure you're all going to be thrilled about, especially if you are kind of worrying about the state of the economy right now, and you're worried about how to, get a house deal completed or anything of that nature. I've got some fantastic resources to share with you today. So let's crack on. I'll be letting one or two people into the webinar as they join, but let's get cracking on the questions, because I know you guys are busy. So first question comes in from Anonymous here. It says, I'm really worried about my mental health and feel constantly anxious because I'm not meeting the expectations of my clients. No matter what I do, it doesn't seem like I'm doing enough, and I get so worked up sometimes I feel physically sick. I've worked so hard to become a conveyancer, but it's all getting too much. I'm at the point where I'm ready to jack in my career and walk away because I've had enough. Please help me. Okay, that's a fairly intense question, whoever submitted that, and I'm really sorry that you're in that place. I want to share with you that I know what that's actually like to be in that position, and a lot of people don't actually know my personal story. So perhaps if I share a little bit about the journey that I've been on over the course of the last sort of, I don't know, maybe 10 years or more, that might sort of help to reflect on this, because it is a thing that I'm seeing a lot more of now, not necessarily in the profession of estate agency and conveyancing and all that sort of thing, but actually in the wider field of social circles, of speaking to friends and all the rest of it. And I really get that this is a major problem. And I believe this week is Mental Health Week, or certainly people are raising exposure about that. So let me share with you my story, guys, because this might help in some respects. And I'm not saying I've got all the answers here, but I've certainly gone through the mill and I understand what it feels like. And so I can really relate to what you're saying. So I want to go back to probably 2000 and maybe 11, maybe 12, that sort of time. And at the time I was actually going out and I was speaking, doing a lot of speaking engagements, and I was speaking on behalf of some fairly big players in the world as far as property investing is concerned. Martin Robertson's Under the Hammer, Robert Kiyosaki from Rich Dad Poor Dad fame, and Robbie Fowler, the footballer. And I was sort of traveling the country. I was doing a lot of mentoring. I was sort of taking people by the hand and taking them into their particular investment areas, and we were doing a lot of work there. I was also speaking a lot of weekends where I'd go down to London and we'd be put up in a fabulous 4-star hotel, and you'd have an audience of anywhere between 20 and 100 people. And I'd sit there and sort of share pearls of wisdom about property investing and what I was learning and how to get started, and the sort of basic fundamentals that a lot of people overlook. And anyway, the point of me telling you all of this is that at the time I was working really hard. I built my property portfolio and I was continuing to build it. And as I say, I was incredibly busy. And I'd always been one of these people that kind of works really, really hard because that's all I know, right? It's what it was taught to me by my family, and I just worked flat out. That's all I knew how to do. So it was kind of, I remember at one point things were so bad. I was coming back, and I think it was like on a Wednesday night, I'd arrive home and I'd sleep Wednesday night at home. And then sort of Thursday afternoon, I'd travel back down to London and start speaking again for the weekend. And I thought, why on earth did I start doing all of this investing and building this property portfolio when actually I just wanted more time freedom and I just wanted more time out, And so I got to a point where beginning of 2015, the cracks started to show. And on the surface, anybody looking into my life at that time would have said, Silas, you kind of got it all. You've got a property portfolio. I think at that time I was earning something like six figures a year from a property portfolio that was coming in as sort of passive income, as they call it. I was doing very well on the sort of speaking circuit. I was, in some weekends, I'd make 5 to 10 grand a weekend for 3 days work. And I'm not saying this to brag or boast. I'm just sharing with you where I was at that point in my life. But underneath all of that, what was actually going on, and I feel a little bit exposed sort of sharing this really, but what was going on underneath all of that was I was standing at the front of the room and I was sharing all of this knowledge and information, and I was what was going on for me was that I had this internal dialogue, and the internal dialogue was I'm a fake, I'm a fraud, I'm a failure. Okay, those were the three voices that went round and round and round, and they got louder and louder and louder. And I thought, who am I to be doing all of this stuff? It became really debilitating, and it was sort of dragging me down until, as I say, beginning of 2015, I was in a hole. And I remember saying to the guys who I was working with at that time, I need some time out. I'm making mistakes at home, and I was making these really daft mistakes that I don't normally make. And I said to them, I need to take some time out here because this is just too much. And I just went to bed, and I found myself literally what I thought was going to be asleep for a couple of days. Turned into basically 3 months being bedridden. And I kid you not, I was living off Domino's pizza and pints of Guinness. And I woke up the one day and I took the empties to the recycling bin. And I think I'd drunk something like 8 or 10 pints of Guinness the night before. And this was on a Wednesday. And I'm thinking, do you know what? There's a problem here. And that was kind of what really woke me up. And before that point, I'll be quite frank with you, I'd always believe when people say, oh, I'm depressed, I used to think, oh, come on, just get on with it, pull yourself out of it. And this is the advice that a lot of people give that when they just don't know any better, right? And so from my side, what actually happened was I ended up in a position where I just became totally overwhelmed by all of these emotions, all of these negative thoughts that were going around in my head. And I just ended up completely sick, to the point where I couldn't go out. I was completely anxious. I was, as I say, my diet was all over the place. And I rang this friend after I took these empties to the bin. And I just thought, you know what? I'll pick up the phone and I'll call a friend. And she was somebody who had unfortunately battled with some mental health issues for a long time. And I just said, look, this is what's going on for me. I'm really concerned. And she turned around and she said, yeah, you need some help and support. And she actually put me in touch with somebody who suggested that I go for what's called CBT. It was called cognitive behavioral therapy, I think it was called. And so I went and did that. And it was really interesting to see this therapist sort of sit there and you kind of pull your heart and soul out and you go, do you know what? I'm not in a good place. And she, over, I think it was about 4 or 5 weeks, she mapped out on a piece of paper everything that was kind of going on in my head and where all these thoughts had come from and what was going on. And it kind of related a lot to, I suppose, trying to please my father and all that sort of thing that was happening at the time. But when I saw everything mapped out on this piece of paper, I was just like, okay, right. So what do I need to do to kind of cure that, And for me, I was not one of these people who likes to go on pills. I don't believe in that necessarily. So for me, I was one of these people that just thought, there's got to be a better way of doing things. And that's how I kind of went down the road of doing a lot of research, doing a lot of checking. And I did, an awful lot of reading online and sort of finding out what is it that kind of triggers depression or what is it that triggers this anxiety. And unfortunately, there's been a huge shift recently where I'd say man, but it's actually man or woman, if you like, that have actually we've detached ourselves from our natural environment. Okay, so we've built houses and we've built blocks of flats, and we're now living in completely artificial environments. And unfortunately, not only is our environment artificial, but also, a lot of our food is artificial. So a lot of the things that we're putting into our body, caffeine particular, alcohol in particular. These can be really bad things that help to drive a nervous system or put a nervous system on overdrive. And I learned, and again, I'm not giving any sort of medical advice here, so please don't get me wrong, I'm just sharing my experience. But what has gone on for a lot of people is that we've become drawn into this social media, we've got into this artificial environment, and then we've got this comparison thing going on where we're looking around us and we're looking at all the people that are on social media and they're living their best life, okay? And unfortunately, we make comparisons of that, and then we get the dopamine receptors get fried because we're constantly looking at screens. So we look at our phones every day. We look at our laptops or our computers at work. We go home, we've got the biggest TVs we've ever had in our lives. And it's just too much sensory overload all the time. And that kind of stimulates more of our nervous system, makes us more anxious, more fed up. And unfortunately, what I found was that you have to take a step back in a lot of ways. And it was daft things like, I read a report online about things like energy efficient light bulbs, for example. And we're told, oh, you've got to have your energy efficient light bulbs, save your money and all this, that, and the other. And then you read this report and it suggests that, this was a credible report written by scientists who have tested these sorts of things. 100% of all energy efficient light bulbs that they tested at the point actually triggered anxiety because the coatings on the bulbs were not effective enough. And of course, you've got one of these burning for 6 to 8 hours every day in your environment, and it can have an impact on the human body. And we think we're immune to it. And then we plug in things like Wi-Fi and 5G and all this sort of stuff. And again, I don't want to sound like a tin foil hat conspiracy theorist, but there's all this sort of stuff that's going on. And we forget that, 100 years ago, none of this existed. We live very simple lives. We didn't have emotional overload. We've gone from what I call the age of information through to now the age of distraction, where the average person now consumes more information in a day than we would have done in probably our entire lifetimes, a couple of 100 years ago. So I think the point of me telling you all of this is that if you're in this position where you're nervous, you're anxious, you're full of depression and all the rest of it, then you kind of got to step back from your environment. And first thing I would do is I would put my phone in what's called grayscale mode. You can turn off the colors so that it just becomes like a black and white or gray screen. That can be really helpful to stop the overload. Try and reduce your screen time massively. Obviously get some professional support and help. I thoroughly recommend CBT. As I say, I'm not a fan of pills myself. I'm not saying they don't have a place. I'm sure, if things are really, really bad for you, it might be something to think about initially, but I don't think it's a long-term solution. And I really don't think, this is my personal view, I really don't think that depression and that sort of thing is caused by a chemical imbalance. That's not what I believe at all. And in fact, I think I read an article that suggested that, is it Prozac, I think, is the number one selling depression medication in the world, which is only 3% to 5% more effective or efficient than a placebo. Sorry, guys, just had a slight interruption there. But I think, as I say, not really a fan of those pills and potions, not saying they don't have a place. But I think from a point of view of moving forward, it's getting that support and that kind of therapy, if you like, from CBT specialists or somebody of that nature who can help you, sort of diagnose these problems and get to the root cause. And again, look at pulling back in terms of the work environment that you're in. I'm not saying quit your profession. I know it feels sometimes it can be really overwhelming, but actually take a balanced view on, are you putting too much time, effort, and resources into your work and not enough actually into your own health? And so I'd look to switch up my diet. I'd go more towards the organic food and sort of stop eating out. Again, things like seed oils apparently are highly inflammatory to the body, and a lot of depression and anxiety can be triggered through inflammation. This is just stuff that I've read that I'm sharing with you that makes sense to me. As I say, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but it certainly makes sense when we consider that we're all eating a lot of fried foods and that sort of thing, which can have a really negative impact on a sort of internal environment. So I think that's what I would do initially. What I can say is that over time, what you're going through right now could be the very best thing that happens to you. And one of the things that I learned for me was that was really the start of what I call a spiritual awakening. And it's when I wrote a book called Love is the New Religion, because I had a very sort of profound spiritual awakening experience. And that was about 3 years later, I think it was, in 2018. And it just sort of blew my mind. You know, we kind of also in society moved away from God, if you like. And I don't know whether you're, agnostic or whether you do have a religious belief or what have you. But the issue for a lot of people, I think, is that we've lost that kind of spiritual connection. And as a consequence, because we've moved away from that, a lot of us find that we struggle with our meaning in life. You know, why are we here? What are we doing? You know, are we just made to go to work and work our backsides off so that we can pay bills and then die? Is that really what we're here for? Or is there a bigger question that needs to be answered off the back of that? And I believe that is absolutely true. I do believe we're all here to deliver our unique sort of gift to the world, if you like. I don't quite know what that is for each and every one of us, and for some of us we're still searching for it many years later, but I do believe it can be one of the very best things that can happen to you. And I don't just say take that lightly. It's something that's happened to me, as I feel I'm very grateful for going through that experience, and I know a lot of my friends who have also had the benefit of going through it certainly believe that it's helped them in terms of their wider picture in life. So I hope that helps, Anonymous. I know it can be a really tough position to go through. As I say, I've been there. That tunnel can be dark when you're in it. It's so difficult when you're in it for people to relate to you, particularly friends and family, because they just see you as, particularly if you're in that depression state, they can't relate. So they just want you to get out of bed, or they just want you to cheer up, or they just want you to go out and socialize and all the rest of it. And actually, it can be really, really difficult. And I think the only way out of that is through it, unfortunately. And if you can face up to it and square up to it, then you will naturally grow and progress through that. And if it helps to have another conversation about this, or anybody watching this and they want to have a private conversation one-on-one, I'm happy to share, all of what I've learned as a result of this journey. As I say, it can be dark, it can be terrifying, it can be really upsetting when you're in it. But I do believe there's a reason for it, and I do believe it's happening more and more, that people are sort of waking up as to what is the purpose of our life, why are we here, what are we doing, and that's really what is causing people to sort of feel this anxiety and depression. Because they realize there's a little bit more to life, or that their soul, if you like, realizes there's a bit more to life, and they want to grow through that, but they don't know how, and that's what keeps them stuck. So, very long-winded answer. I hope sharing my journey has helped. As I say, I'm more than happy to have a conversation with you one-on-one, or anybody else that's sort of watching this that has struggled with the same things. I've been more than delighted to do that. So, yeah, just get in touch with me and let me know. But certainly, I hope that's helped and has given you a certain few pointers along the way. So, thanks ever so much for the question there. Okay, moving on. That was quite heavy, wasn't it? Let me just take a quick sip of my tea, because that was quite heavy. All right, perfect. So let's move on. Question number 2 here comes from Les. Hi there, Les. I am looking to sell a 3-bed house in Ipswich with good long-term tenants who really want to stay on. I retired last year and no longer want the hassle as I want to travel. I was wondering whether it would be better to end the tenancy and sell my property empty on the normal market rather than the avenue I'm about to take, selling to investors. Which route would get me the most for my property? Okay, that's a great question, Les. Thank you for submitting that to us. A couple of options for you, Les, I think, on that front. It looks as though you're exploring these different options, which is great, and you're already talking to investors. That would be one route, certainly, that I would look at, depending upon the condition of the house, how long the tenants have been there for you, and if they're regular payers. It sounds like they're good tenants, which you've highlighted there as well. And selling a property with good long-term tenants to what I would call armchair investors would be perhaps a good route for you, because you'll be able to get a very good price for that particular property. Okay. Now, the reason I say armchair investors rather than professional investors is because professional investors will usually want a discount to market value. Okay. And as a consequence, they will chip your price by 10, 20, 30% perhaps in order to try and get a good deal. Whereas an armchair investor is just looking at the fact that they can put in a certain amount of money, whether that is for their deposit and then top it up with a mortgage, or whether to buy the whole thing cash and then work out what their annual rate of return is based on what the tenant's actually been paying. So that would certainly be your first option, looking at selling to a more armchair investor. Second route might be to look at selling the property at an auction. Okay, so if I was in your shoes, I'd ring a couple of the local auctioneers, have a chat with them, see what they say. They're going to give you the patter, of course. They're going to give you the patter, but sort of try and see through that and see what you're going to get realistically compared to the open market value of the property. It can be difficult to obviously want to terminate a tenant's contract. So one of the third thing I would seriously look at, Les, and if you want some help with this, let me know, because you won't get this sort of guidance from many people. But I would look at setting up perhaps a lease option, or explore the option of a lease option with your tenants, because if they're good long-term tenants and they've lived in the property for a long time, chances are they might be aspiring to buy, but there might be a reason why they can't. Okay, now a lease option is an investor strategy, and effectively, I want you to think of like a lease option as a almost like a hire purchase arrangement on a car. Where if you look at buying a car on a hire purchase, normally you go and put a deposit down, right? And you'd pay monthly payments, and then at the end you'd usually pay a balloon payment or something of that nature, right? So that same example might work with your property here in Ipswich, and I don't know your situation, whether you've got a mortgage on it or not, but it might work. Let's say, for example, your tenants are in that property and they can't buy because they've maybe got blemishes on their credit file or there's some other issue of that regard, then it might pay you to have a chat with them and say, well, actually, do you know what? If you want to buy this property, here's what we can do. And you could get a deposit from them, perhaps. Obviously, this is all formalized in a contract, so I don't think that we're doing this on a handshake and a bit of paper, but you would look for maybe a deposit as a down payment, and then they would become effectively homeowners in their own right. And the benefit of me telling you that, Les, is that the tenants would then take on all of the management responsibility of the property, because they are effectively now, they're no longer tenants, they're now actually acting as homeowners. So as a consequence, they will then adopt all of the usual issues. So I don't know, the boiler goes on Christmas Eve and all that sort of thing. That's now their problem, right? Or the garden's overgrown, etc., or some other issue that tenants wind you up with. Then it's worth just getting them to fix it, because they're actually living in the property as a homeowner and acting as a homeowner would. And it might be that perhaps they've got blemishes on the credit file. In 5 years' time, those blemishes will no longer be there, and then they're in a position to get a mortgage and buy the property off you at that point, and then execute the transaction with, and then paying you that balloon payment, as it were. So I know there's quite a lot of detail there, Liz. So I don't want you to run off and just think, oh, can I do this with my normal residential conveyancing solicitor? Chances are you probably can't, and I'm not being mean to them, but a lot of conveyancing solicitors that I've spoken to, including one who probably did about 10 property deals for me. When I went and talked to her, she said, "Oh no, Silas, not another one of your harebrained schemes," right? That was her response to me, dear Wendy, bless her. So it might be that we have to look at getting you a more commercially minded solicitor to look at this and put together the lease option, but certainly it can be done. There's many investors in the UK market who have been doing these, and it's all about how you sort of lay that up to the tenant and see whether or not they're interested in taking this on. But if you've got a good relationship with them, which it sounds like you have, then I would seriously look at that as an option, because the benefit to you is that you get a little bit of money up front. Okay, you still get your monthlies, because they'll be paying every single month for you, but you don't get any of the hassle, and then you still get a balloon payment at the end. And you can tie that balloon payment either as a fixed figure right from day one, so you agree the figure now, and it might be that you agree a 5-year term or a 10-year term on the deal, and then you might tie it or index it to property prices in 5 or 10 years' time. Okay, so rather than saying we've agreed the figure now, we'll agree it based on market value in 10 years' time minus 10%. There's so much flexibility with all of this, Les, is what I'm trying to say. So hopefully that gives you some idea and starts the sort of creative juices flowing in your mind. That's certainly what I'd do if I was in your position. And I would hope that, with a little bit of, appropriately talking to your tenants in the right way, they'll be able to look at taking this on for you, which will be amazing. So hope that helps, Les. Reach out to me if you need any help and support on that. I'll happily sort of sit down with you on a Zoom call. We can go through how the mechanics of that actually work, and then we'll get you a good solicitor on board who can do that one for you. All right. Good job. Thank you, Les. Right. Let's move on. Question number 3. This one comes in from Eddie. Thank you, Eddie. Eddie says, we bought a Victorian semi in London and had a building and damp survey done as there were suspicious patches on the walls. The surveyor said it wasn't rising damp and it could be fixed with salt treatment and repaint. I've done this 3 times now and it hasn't worked. The owner never lived in the property as he bought it to do up and resell. The estate agent at the time got a damp-proof person's carrier, a free assessment. They said it was rising damp and needed a DPC injection. The surveyor disagreed with this and said they were pulling a fast one. It has since turned out that it's actually an issue as we spoke to the company that worked on the property, and they said that they had to use heaters every day to dry out the walls. Have I been conned by this surveyor when everybody else said there was an issue? I purchased the house on this basis. Now I have 2 walls with these awful damp patches and no funds to get it sorted. What can I do, or what are my options to resolve this? Do I have any recourse from anyone? Right. Okay. Wow. Quite a long question there already, but thank you for submitting that to us. Right. From looking at this, and I'm going on the face of what you've told me, Eddie, so obviously there might be some stuff going on in the background that we don't know about, but it does sound to me as though the surveyor has made a mistake. And I'm saying this as a qualified building surveyor, so I don't make this statement lightly, but it does look as though they've made a mistake and they've perhaps misadvised you, particularly if there was information to the contrary in front of them. Now, I'm surprised that or there doesn't appear to have been the surveyor testing the walls themselves with their damp-proof meter and producing some readings on that and deciding whether or not that was a problem. And if it was obvious that there were damp patches on the wall, then it does seem to be curious that they haven't highlighted this as a potential issue. And the reason I say that's important is because had it been highlighted, and I have not read your report here, Eddie, so I don't know whether it was or not highlighted, but if it was, you've now lost the opportunity to go back and renegotiate on the price of the property based on the surveyor's findings, right? So you've gone in there, you've done your due diligence, you've had your surveyor look at this. They haven't highlighted it appropriately from what you're telling me, and as a consequence, you've now lost the opportunity to get that fixed either prior to purchase or to have some money knocked off to cover the costs of the work, right? And so I would. If I was in your shoes, Eddie, what I'd be doing is I'd be approaching the surveyor. I'd be having a word with them and saying, look, this is what's happened. We've got a copy of the damp report here. I've also spoken to these people. This is what they've told me. And then I would submit a quote to the surveyor and tell them this is how much it's going to cost to have this work done. And the surveyor is then in a position where they're going to have to face facts. They've either got to refer you to the report where it's caveated that says, actually, this is what I said and you're wrong, which might be the possibility. I can't rule that out because I don't have the information in front of me. But it may be that the surveyor has to either take it on the chin and fork out for the work to be done to repair that damp problem. Because the other alternative, of course, is that you go down the road of claiming against their professional indemnity insurance, which is not going to be easy, but it will incur a cost to the surveyor, perhaps in the form of an increased premium, and they will obviously have to pay an excess on that as well. So I think it's one of these opportunities for you to have a polite conversation with the surveyor initially. We do make mistakes. We're human, of course. That happens, and that's why they have the insurance to cover that in case there is a problem, okay? So go and have a chat with them, see what they've got to say, and then, as I say, it's either they'll fork out for the work to be done, I would suggest, because it doesn't sound like it's going to be hugely expensive, and it may well fall within the remit of their excess anyway, or you may have to go down the route of claiming against their insurance. There will be a complaints procedure process that you'll have to go through. This is why I'm saying that you need to get as much information together up front to begin with before you start going down this complaints procedure route, okay? So I hope that helps, Eddie. It is something that I say that does happen, and I've actually experienced it myself in a property. We didn't have it with a surveyor, but we bought a an old farmhouse, and bearing in mind there was no damp-proof course on this property because it was built in like the 1850s or something. The only one internal wall, used to get damp. And it was one of these problems where we kind of ignored it. We kind of hoped it would go away. We'd brush the salts off and sort of bit of paint over it. And after about 4 years, I think we had enough, and we just took all the render off on the internal wall, all of the plaster off up to about 1 meter height. And I had a friend who worked at a damp-proof company, and we got some damp-proof with slurry and all the rest of it. So we threw that on the wall with a bit of render coating and a top coat of plaster, and it cured the problem. So it might be a quick fix. I don't know, but that's the benefit, I suppose, of being in the trade and knowing a few people. So have a go at that, see what happens. Obviously, come back to me if you need any more support around that, and I'll do my best to help you. All right. Thank you so much for the question. Moving on, question number 4. Wow, this is a good one from Martin. I'm not sure whether I should do these webinars with a glass of water or a glass of beer, maybe on a Wednesday afternoon, but let's see how we get on answering this one. So Martin asks, should we sell our house and rent instead and use the equity to pay our rent? We're concerned about not being able to pay our bills and mortgage as the cost of living rises. We've been managing fine as we budgeted for everything, at least we thought so. When we took out our mortgage 5 years ago, we're in our 50s and not sure whether to ride it out until things return to normal and just cut back on everything in the hope we will claw it back when house prices rise once again, or get out now and maybe also invest into something else, not property. What do you think? Okay, Martin, that's a really interesting question, and I feel for you, as with everybody that's in this position right now with rising cost of living, and I feel there's 2 ways I can answer this, and I feel very aggrieved, quite frankly, that we're being forced into this position where we're having to pay more for utilities, and particularly petrol prices, etc., when the wholesale markets are showing that the raw costs of materials are a lot less than they were earlier on, which has caused this sort of alleged rise in wholesale gas costs and all the rest of it. So, look, should you sell your house and rent it and rent instead and use your equity to pay the rent? I think that's a dangerous strategy, personally. Okay, you would use your income to pay the rent. Okay, that's a different thing entirely. But to take a cash lump sum from your equity and use that to pay your rent, I would say is a dicey strategy. And I look, I'm a risk taker, Martin. I'm that kind of person that likes to take risks and all the rest of it. But I think what the question underlying says to me, Martin, really is you're kind of looking for certainty in an uncertain world. And this is a problem that we have, is that we kind of want everything to stay the same, right? This is a human psychological thing. We want everything to stay the same. And any change that comes along, well, especially once we plan for it, just kind of throws us into a quandary. And this is why I'm not really much of a planner, and I am a bit more of a risk taker, because I have this self-belief that kind of says, no matter what happens, I'll deal with it. Okay, and I've gone through some fairly big challenges recently and in the past. And my view has always been, okay, I'll deal with it. And you kind of go through these challenges and they work out, okay? Now, in your situation, excuse me, I would, depending upon your risk profile, I probably wouldn't sell if I was in your position, okay? Because you're going to lose your foot on the housing ladder, and your home, and I'm looking at this from an investment perspective, your home isn't an investment really, okay? It's where you live. And even though we're taught that our home is our biggest asset, which is what Robert Kiyosaki talks about in Rich Dad, Poor Dad, your home isn't actually an asset. And this is going to, pardon my language, piss a lot of people off when I say this, because we're always told that our home is our biggest asset, right? And Robert Kiyosaki looks at the definition of an asset in a very different way. And he says that your home, that an asset, I'll start with an asset first of all. An asset is something that puts money in your pocket. That's his literal definition of an asset. And I agree with that, okay? Whereas a liability is something that takes money out of your pocket each and every month, okay? Now, if you think about your home, does that put money in your pocket every single month, or does it take money out of your pocket every single month? And for most people, the overwhelming amount of people, your home is not an asset for you, all right? It's actually the bank's asset. Because for the bank, it produces money every single month. All right. But for the rest of us, our homes are really our liabilities. And as I say, that's going to piss a lot of people off. And I make no apologies for it, because it's a different way of looking at things. And I actually think it's quite right, because we've been taught this model of where we hold all of our wealth in one particular vehicle, which is our main home. And actually, it prevents us from looking at a wider field of, well, what other options are there perhaps for me to go out there and either start investing or actually to generate other income. And for me, the way out of all of this for a lot of people is to look at what you can do to bring in more revenue, okay, or more income. Because never in the history of the world have we had more opportunities available to us at our fingertips than ever before. And that can be in the form of our, accessing the internet through our mobile phones or through our laptops or whatever it might be. The information age, or the availability of access to the internet, has brought about a wealth of opportunity. But the problem is, how do you recognize a good opportunity from a wrong one that might end up with you being scammed? And I think the point of what I'm trying to say here, Martin, is your home is your home is your home, and that should be, in Englishman's home is his castle. It should be protected and looked after. Your outgoings and your income is what really needs looking at, all right? And so your income needs to be topped up because your expenses have actually gone up. And you can look at reducing your expenses, but you're never going to get to a point of being rich. And maybe that's not your objective in life, but you're never going to get to a point of being rich or wealthy if your income is only marginally more than your expenses. So you've got to look at ways at how to increase your income that will help you to balance this equation. And I've got to be careful that I don't sound like a Conservative Party member when I say this, because apparently there was somebody in the press recently who got slaughtered for saying, this is an opportunity for people to get better paying jobs. That's not what I'm saying at all. But what I am saying is that there are potential avenues that you can look at that will help you to generate more income. There are obviously opportunities that you can look at to reduce your expenses, such as solar panels and all that sort of thing. But that's a sort of longer term play in terms of paying down your expenses or getting off the grid altogether, versus the opportunity to bring in more income. And I'll just throw it out there, because this is one of our exciting announcements that I was going to make a little bit later on. But as soon as we're on the question, Martin, I'll announce it now, that WiggyWam as a property platform are actually launching our own affiliate system. And we've done this partly because we'd rather the sort of raving fans of WiggyWam, if you like, benefit financially from supporting us rather than the money going into a shareholder's pocket. I'd much rather it be that way, to be honest with you, because I think that's fair. It's sort of democratizing cash in that respect, or democratizing wealth. So I'd rather it be built in that manner than actually going into shareholders' pockets. That's the first thing I'm going to say on that. But the opportunity is there for, if you like what we're about, Martin, and you think that we're kind of going places, and you'd like to be part of that journey, then I'd encourage you to join our affiliate system, because we have a certain number of places that we're not going to offer to everybody, but the initial influx of affiliates are going to be rewarded very, very well financially for the work that they do in supporting us in our journey and bringing more people on board with what we're doing. So I'm really excited about that. And again, we've done that with a mind to this cost of living crisis that people are being hounded with by the media, and it is really worrying. I do appreciate that, and not everybody is in a position to look at bringing in more income. I do appreciate that, and I do feel for everybody in this position, because maybe I shouldn't say this, but I do actually pray every night that people are able to overcome this opportunity, this challenge, because I do see a lot of people struggling. I do see a lot of people suffering, and I'm getting a bit emotional about this, because I do see it where you've got elderly people that are in. Excuse me, that are in. Sorry, I wasn't expecting to get this involved, but you do see it on social media with people saying about their parents that are either incapacitated or they live in a home and they're literally having to choose between eating or actually turning the heat on that sort of thing as well. So I won't go on about this too much, Martin, because I'm getting a bit overwhelmed. I'm sorry, it's just caught me off guard completely, but I do think that that is an opportunity that if it resonates with you and you think you like what we're all about, then please get on board with that. And I'd love to help you out. And again, anybody else watching this who wants to be involved and become a mover and shaker of WiggyWam and become one of our raving fans, then yeah, I'd love to have you on board as far as that's concerned. So hope that helps, Martin. And yeah, anything I can do to support you, please let me know. All right. So thanks for the question, and thanks for making me emotional. Okay, on that, right? Let's move on. Question number 5. It's coming here from James. Thank you, James, for this question. It's quite a long one, so let me read it to you guys. James says, we sold our home to a developer via an estate agent, subject to the builder getting planning permission to develop the property. It was on the market for nearly 11 months. Planning permission was granted. An exchange of contracts took place with completion due at the end of August. After exchange, it came to light that there was a covenant in the deeds of the property restricting development of the site, which for extra costs, the covenant could be, as builders said, they were waiting for the covenant to be lifted. We feel we've been had. It turns out builder is our estate agent's boyfriend. The solicitor we used was recommended by the agent too. Can we take any action against them as they failed to complete? Is it legal for the agents to do deals for the benefits of friends and family? The developers are delaying, still want to buy, but we know in 12 months our property has drastically increased in value. Should we pull out and find another buyer, or should we hold out given the economy and potentially the property may significantly reduce, possibly even below our agreed price, plus it may take another 12 months to find a buyer? Okay, all right, that's a really in-depth question there, James, and thank you for sending that through. There's quite a lot of angles to go at that. If I excuse me a second. Okay. Right, let's put these emotions to one side, shall we, James? Right, let's get on with this one. I think here's how I'm going to approach this, James. I don't know all the terms of the deal, obviously, but it seems to me there's a couple of points that need to be addressed. And first and foremost, for me, the estate agent should have disclosed a personal connection with the developer or builder. That should have been disclosed up front. It should have been made abundantly clear from day one. And it sounds to me as though it wasn't, which is not good. So that needs to be brought to light. However, that is dealt with, I'm not quite sure, but you would need to certainly have that conversation with the estate agent and say what on earth's going on here, because this is a significant conflict of interests. And as I say, it should and ought to have been disclosed right up front. Okay, but secondly, now what you're saying here, and I want to be careful on the wording to make sure I've understood what you're saying here, but it sounds as though the solicitors acting for the developer haven't been thorough enough if the issue has come to light after exchange. And the bit I want to clarify with you is whether we're actually talking about a legal exchange of contracts or whether or not you've agreed an option. Okay, and that could be the case in this scenario where the builder's taken an option on your property. Okay, and that may be for a period of 12 months, and then it's come out after they've started doing the legal work to get ready to exchange, that actually there is this covenant that's in place that then needs to be rectified. Okay, now that's the first bit I'd like to clarify, whether it is or not that you've got an exchange of contracts or whether it's an option agreement that's been agreed. The second point is you said that there is a possibility that this covenant can be lifted, and that depends on the lawyers to do their bit to dig in a little bit deeper and find out exactly what's gone on and what are the terms of that covenant, how long has it got left on it, is it due to expire in 12 months' time, which is why they want to hang on, or is there some other mechanism that's in place that they feel that they can actually get it lifted? Because it sounds to me as though they'll be paying a penalty if they do redevelop the site and then cash out as a result of the way that you've structured the deal. Yeah, and this is what leads me to suspect it might be an option that you've suggested here, James, because you sold the home to a developer subject to the builder getting planning permission to develop the property. Now, has the planning permission gone through? That's the first question, because it may be that in 12 months' time, if they then apply for planning, then there's the uplift in the value, and that's when they might get hammered by those covenants, or they might not if they wait long enough. So there's a couple of things I'd like to clarify there. But look, if you've exchanged contracts, it's a legally binding exchange of contracts, okay? And all of the other stuff that I've said about the maybes and the what who's get put to one side, then they are legally bound to complete the deal. And again, it depends what terms you've agreed in the contract as to how they're actually going to complete the deal, but they should be legally bound to complete it. And that would be something that I would be approaching my solicitor, who acted, well, the solicitor that acted for you, obviously, and say, what's going on here? They haven't completed. We've exchanged contracts, and I want to go after them. In effect, so you would look at keeping their deposit. You'd look at serving them notice to complete, and say, you've got to complete by this deadline, and after which you're going to start racking up some penalties, which would be the way to go about it. If the developer wants you to wait for 12 months because of that will help with the terms and conditions of the covenant, then they should make it financially worth your while to do so. And so these are the sorts of things that it's difficult to answer, James, because I don't have the paperwork in front of me. And I've not been able to look at the terms that you've agreed to, but it does sound to me as though there was a couple of things that haven't been completely transparent in the way that this whole thing's been set up. And I would be certainly asking some very uncomfortable questions to all parties involved as to why this hasn't been disclosed and why this hasn't been brought to everybody's attention right from day one. So hope that helps, James. As I say, more than happy to get involved and do a bit of troubleshooting on that deal for you. It's one of the things that I love doing. I love getting involved with this. I actually had one guy, this is many, many years ago, he'd got involved with a site, which was a commercial site actually, and he'd sold this piece of land. And I think he'd done some kind of joint venture, and the builder had thrown the building up, or the frame of the building up. And then there'd been a big falling out about it, and they'd actually walked away from the deal. And he was like, what should I do? It's, nothing's happened on it in 3 years. And I just said, you know what, actually look at this one thing. And when we started to explore it, I think the property values had moved on quite a bit. And actually there was a more financial incentive to get the building completed and get it sold, and then divvy up the profits and wipe out any of the financial mistakes, rather than actually going down the legal route and bashing everybody through the legal channels where only the lawyers would win in court effectively. So I think that was a great sort of thing that I got involved with. And I saw the guy about 3 months later, and he's like, do you know what? It's actually worked to treat developers on board. They're finishing the build. We're going to get it sold, and everybody's going to be happy. So there's different ways to approach this, James. And as I said, I'd be more than happy to troubleshoot that with you in a bit more detail, should you want to later on. So that's been a fairly intense webinar today, guys. I can't believe you guys have brought me to tears with your questions, but thank you for all of that. I really appreciate it. I know it's been quite a heavy one today, but let's lighten the mood. Let's go a little bit lighter with things. And as I say, one of the announcements I made earlier, which was for those of you that are concerned about the cost of living crisis, or you're raving fans of what WiggyWam are all about, or you like what we're up to, where we want to speed up the housing market effectively and get deals done very, very quickly, then I'm going to encourage you to reach out to me on our email address, happy to help at wiggywam.co.uk, and you can ask for further information about our affiliate system, and I'm quite happy to have a chat with you about that, guide you through what we're all about. We actually provide a lot of the marketing materials for you for that, so it's what we call a done for you, or done with you service, should I say, and then all it requires is you plugging in your contacts into the system, and away we go. All right, so that's quick and easy. And the returns, I say we're only going to offer a very small number of affiliates, the top tier of what we're offering, because we want to have really good people on board who are going to benefit and are going to be shall we say, evangelists, if you like, of the WiggyWam way, and are going to get involved in helping us spread the word, which is amazing. Second bit of good news, which I'm thrilled about, I really am, is there we are. I had this book finally got printed, and I got a copy of it in my hands as we moved house into the new house. book arrived, which I'm absolutely thrilled about. And this is a book called Home Buyers Secrets. If you can't read it here, it is a book that I've written for home buyers and sellers. And it basically takes, I suppose, 25 plus years of experience in all avenues of property investing or buying and selling property as an estate agent, surveyor, property investor, trainer, mentor, and all that sort of thing, and condenses a lot of my knowledge and experience into the pages of this book so that it can be used as a guide to help people buy and sell property more efficiently. Okay. Now, obviously, it's involved using the professional agents, professional estate agents, professional solicitors to help you buy and sell. But it's about picking the right ones to get them on your team, and all of the intricacies that kind of go on behind the scenes that nobody ever tells you about when you're embarking on your home buying or selling journey. For a lot of us, and what I've seen in the marketplace thousands of times is that people decide that they want to move house. And they get all really excited about it, and they start looking online for the right house, and they start, thinking, "Oh, this is a great house to move to. What do you think about this one, darling?" You go out and do all the viewings, and then you get really excited because you think, "I've found the house for me," and then it's just like, it becomes this drag, of trying to get the deal. And I'm not saying this happens across the country, but a lot of the times I'm realizing that people don't actually know what goes on behind the scenes. They don't know what's required to kind of get a deal done as quickly as possible. They don't know all of the things that, all of the bear traps, all of the pitfalls, all the financial potholes that can disable you as you're sort of going on this journey to try and buy your dream home, and something kicks you in the pants and you end up out of pocket, So with that in mind, to try and stop people, I think the statistics are apparently 1 in 3 property deals will fall through, and it will leave the buyer and the seller with costs of up to about £2,000. And I think that's, in today's day and age, something needs to be done about that, which is exactly why I produced this book. Okay, and we've also included a free property training. So if you're one of these people that doesn't necessarily like reading, or you can't find the time for reading, we've also produced a video course that goes alongside this, where you can watch some videos and sort of get a bit more of an in-depth understanding of some of the concepts that we talk about in Home Buyer Secrets. So I'm super excited about that. And I'm happy to give away a number of signed copies. I think let's go for, I would say 10, but 10's a bit, whatever. Let's go for 7, shall we? Or should we go for 17? I'm not sure. I tell you what, let's go for, why not? We'll do 17 copies, okay? Anybody that wants a copy of this or wants a signed copy of it, get in contact with me. I'll happily mail you one and send that out to you. So that'll be via the email address, happy to help at WiggyWam.co.uk, and send me your email and with your name and address. I'll do you a signed copy. I'll get that in post to you ASAP, and I'll be grateful if you give us your honest feedback about it, see what you think. Hopefully it's entertaining, and hopefully it gives you some of the bit more of an in-depth exposure to some of the things that I've been through in life, which has been quite entertaining and quite fun. So I've tried to make it a little bit light-hearted, even though it's nearly 200 pages. I think we've got this up to. So yeah, it's there's a lot of info in there, but certainly I'm very confident that it will fast-track your journey to home buying utopia just by reading the book and exposing yourself to the knowledge and information that we've shared there. So. Really excited to get that going, guys. As I say, anything else that you need in terms of any questions answered, or any kind of support that you need with any property deals that you've got going on, or anything like that, please do reach out. Please get in contact with us. Happy to help at WiggyWam.co.uk, with a Twitter handle as well, which is at WiggyWam_UK. And we'd love to have those questions come in. You can also go to our WiggyWam website, which is wiggywam.co.uk, and you can set yourself up a free profile in there. You can have a roam around. You can get access to our learning center, where we share a lot of invaluable information in there for you, which I'm really excited about. So we're trying our best to give as much knowledge, education, resources as we possibly can to people to really help them on their journey, because I know what it can be like. It can be a nightmare trying to buy a property or sell a property or all the rest of it. And we just want to help and support as many people as possible. We also want to align ourselves with those estate agents and those solicitors that are delivering excellence to their clients on a daily basis. Okay. And we've got some really cool things lined up to help them as much as possible, to help them get more clients and to help them make a more profitable service available to their clients as well. So lots going on behind the scenes, guys. I'm really excited about it. Thank you again for joining me today, and look forward to seeing you again on another webinar. Any more help and support that you need, then please reach out and let me know. All right, guys, amazing webinar. Thank you so much indeed for your time, and I will look forward to seeing you very soon. Take care.